Thanks so much, Mary. Thank you, everyone. We got a crowded room here tonight, and thank you, everyone who's watching online. Truth be told, I cannot be everywhere. Well, I tried. Saturday night, there's a children's advocacy dinner in Lincoln City. There's a community awards banquet in Lincoln City, and there's the Humane Society's I gotta say this, they spaghetti and no balls dinner in Lincoln City, and they're all exactly the same time. And the Community Days banquet is very casual. It's a hamburger dinner. The children's advocacy, on the other hand, is black tie. Children's advocacy starts at 5. I was going to drop by in my tuxedo. Then I was going to go over to the children's advocacy dinner, and Susan is going to be at the Humane Society dinner. So it just seems like we're everywhere. Well, first of all, I was asked about my campaign this year. Goodness. I'm a believer that the best campaign is not the one that you wage during election season, but the one that you wage every single day. Representing people with respect and with courtesy, showing up as often as you can, making yourself available to people, and to communicating on an effective and wide basis as often as you can, which is why I hope all of you are reading my weekly newsletters where I try to provide information. But 2 years ago when I ran for re-election, I was nominated by the Democrats. And then a few weeks later, I was nominated by the Independent Party of Oregon, not to be confused with non-affiliated voters, but the Independent Party. And then later on, I was nominated by the Republican Party. And I'm proud of it. I am proud of that. And we'll see how things transpire here in the next couple of weeks. But I would say again that it's important that we celebrate our similarities and we respect our differences, and that's how we thrive as a community. Now, we have got an important, exciting, and consequential race going on at the county level here. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But I wanted to first spend just a moment or two talking about another consequential matter that will be on your May ballot when they come out in a few days. And that is the referral of the gas tax measure to Oregon voters. Now, here's what's going on. We're driving less. We're driving fuel-efficient vehicles. We're using mass transit bicycles. We're using electric vehicles. And all of that is good. But it means we're buying less gasoline, and we pay for our roads with gasoline taxes. And the fact is that our gasoline taxes have not kept up with inflation. The cost of asphalt since 2019 has gone up 35%. Steel's gone up nearly 70%. And those inflationary increases have left the Department of Transportation here in Oregon with a $300 million deficit. So to address that, the Oregon legislature went through a process, and I'll admit that it was a messy process. But at the end of the day, in a special session, we convened and agreed that we would tax electric vehicles by the mile, that we would increase registration and titling fees, and we would increase the gasoline tax by 6%. Excuse me, not 6%, 6 cents. Increase the gasoline tax by 6 cents per gallon. And almost immediately, signatures were collected to put that question on the ballot for all Oregonians to review and to decide. Now, they didn't put everything on the ballot. They did not put the charge on electric vehicles on the ballot. And if I were an EV owner, I'd be really mad right now because you're going to get charged more even if this measure is overturned. So that's out there. But the transportation increase on titles and fees and gas taxes will be on the ballot. And I was fortunate to be asked to meet with the Oregonian editorial board yesterday and to advocate for why people should support this. And I talked about the fact that we've got a $300 million deficit and we're not keeping up with the costs of maintaining our roads. And the roads are critically important, not only to our economy and to our quality of life, but critically important to our personal safety. If we can't paint the fog lights or remove snow or fill the potholes or remove whatever debris Mother Nature may pile onto our roads, then we've got safety issues. And they said to me, well, what about this $4 billion tax increase? That's what they call it, $4 billion massive tax increase. And I smiled and said, well, that's really clever. That's really clever because that's a 10-year figure. I mean, we all heard $4 billion. Has anybody mentioned that it's over the course of 10 years? I said, if you drive 12,000 miles a year, which is average, and you get a mere 20 miles to the gallon and pay 6 cents a gallon on that, then you're going to be looking at a cost of $36 a year or about $3 a month, which would be the cost of a candy bar. And they said, well, it's not just the gas tax, it's also the other fees. I said, all right, well, let's use your $4 billion number and let's spread that over 1 year instead of 10 years, which is 400 million, and spread that over 4 billion Oregonians. Now we're talking about $100 per person or about $8 a month. And they said, well, don't you think that there's an affordability issue that a lot of Oregonians can't afford the price of gasoline? I said, well, I wish we were talking about the $2 that federal policies and President Trump have added to our price of gasoline in the last few months. But if you want to talk about the 6 cents, you want to talk about the $100 a year that we may be looking at, yeah, that's going to land hard on some Oregonians that are having trouble paying their bills. It is, which is why I'm so very glad that this last legislative session, we passed the largest increase in the earned income tax credit in Oregon's history. That's a tax break for working low-income Oregonians and Oregon families. And that's going to be important for them when they look at trying to pay their rent, pay their groceries, and to buy gasoline. And I hope that we are able to sustain this 6 cent increase. I need to stress that half that money is going to come back to cities and counties. It's not all going to the state. It's going to cities and counties to pay your local potholes. But at the end of the day, I'm very serious when I say this is a matter of personal safety and supporting our economy and maintaining our quality of life, particularly out here at the coast where 229 is closed. You've got the Beverly Beach bumps. You've got the rumble strips at milepost 13 on Highway 20. Cascade Head is down to 1 lane. This is critically important. And I think that yesterday when I met with the Oregonian board and sat across the table from Representative Deal, that we won the debate, but I fear that we're going to lose the election, then we'll be back to square one. And what that means is to balance the budget this year and to keep maintenance in place, we left all the vacant positions vacant. 20% of the ODOT employees have left because of the uncertainty and because of the increased workload that's left on the ones that are still there. 20% of them are left. I mean, we had to leave those positions vacant. And then we cut safe routes to school. Those are the crosswalks and sidewalks and pathways that are getting our kids more safely to schools. And then we cut money that we spend to support our ports and our freight rail lines that are so critically important, particularly in our coastal economy. And then the one that really, really stings me is that we delayed repairs on dozens of rural and coastal bridges that are seismically vulnerable and dangerously in need of repairs. We put that off. And when the time comes that we're eventually going to fix them, it's going to cost a lot more money. So I'll say again, the odds are that this measure is going to be overturned, but I'll be voting for it. I hope a lot of you will as well. So let's talk about the county commission. They said that we've got an exciting, interesting, and consequential race. And we've got a group of candidates here tonight. Look, this is the Democratic Party meeting, and the candidates that are invited to the table are those that are registered in the Democratic Party. There are other candidates out there, but we're going to hear tonight from the group that is at the table here. And I'm going to give you some initial questions to ask each of them. And then there's a basket over here where you can put slips of paper and raise additional questions. And it's now about 10:06, and we're going to be trying to run this until maybe roughly 7 o'clock at 7:15.
7:15 is fine. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll continue until we either run out of time, run out of questions, or run out of answers. How's that? So I'm going to start with the first question. Well, no, excuse me. First of all, we're going to ask each of the candidates to take 3 to 4 minutes and introduce themselves and give us your own story before we start asking you specific questions. And why don't I start that at this end of the table? Cristen, if you'd like to lead off.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Cristen. I think most of you have probably heard me speak at this point, so I'm going to keep it short to give us more time for the questions. But I lived here in Lincoln County for 22 years. I've dedicated my career to public service and to serving coastal communities. My background is in ocean science, policy, and management. I spent more than 18 years at the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. I also worked at NOAA and I've owned my own consulting business. And the through line is I worked to build partnerships across government, businesses, and local community organizations. And I worked with communities to bring them together, to navigate complex issues, to make hard decisions with transparency, clear communication, and trust. I'm running to bring stability, service, and stewardship to our county government. I have the skills and experience to lead and help restore public trust, to support our county staff, and to ensure essential county services run reliably. I would love your vote on May 19th. I'm a practical solutions-oriented leader, and I would look forward to working with you all to help ensure Lincoln County is a place where all members of our community can live, work, and thrive. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Cathie Rigby. So I'm also running for seat 1, Lincoln County Commissioner, and I will keep it brief as well because I would love to hear all of the questions. So my background is that I'm white, a mother. I'm the daughter of immigrant parents, and I'm the current city manager. It's not city manager, grants manager of the city of Newport. And in that role, I manage about $30 million of the federal and philanthropic and state funding for the city. My background before coming to here is that I grew up on the East Coast in Boston, Massachusetts. And then because of disinvestment and rapid redevelopment, my family was forced to move and we wound up in Salt Lake City, Utah. And that affordability is what kept my family there. And I am the mother of 6 children. They were all raised there. Some of them are still there. And then when they started leaving home, I took an opportunity to take the job here in Newport. So I'm very excited to come here. I feel as though I was invited to Newport. In my last work experience, I have about 10 years of municipal government experience. So I worked in juvenile probation, I worked in housing and neighborhood development, and I worked in economic development. So a lot of the skills that I bring to grants management are because I work in various city departments, and I understand the needs of those departments. I've also done a lot of community building, and I've advocated for low-income families, for families and businesses who are in need of some support. I am looking to bring to the county a good sense of overall management and organization. That's what I believe has been the foundation of my career. I've been able to organize systems, and I've also been brought in to help organize departments or systems. I also have a great deal of experience, as you might imagine, in looking for funding to help fill gaps. And that is the need that I've heard across this community repeatedly, that we need those gaps filled as we lose federal funding and state funding, as you've heard today. So I hope to bring those skills, also my personal skills in being able to bridge gaps, make connections within the community. I serve on a couple of boards, so I've been hard at work since living here. I'm on OPAT, which is a governor-appointed position, the Oregon Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I'm on UAC, which is the Universal Accessibility Committee, and I'm also on Cape Provincial Collaborative, which is a sustainability group here in Oregon. So I hope to be able to bring my connections and experience together and offer Lincoln County some really good, solid work experience along with personal.
Good evening, thank you for letting me be here. My name is Dru Earls. I'm running for the position 1 Board of Commissioners. And Rachel Maddow has a really good saying that says, don't listen to what they say, listen to what they, or pay attention to what they do. And I think that's a great idea, because ever since I started this process, I've heard and read things about me, and none of them are accurate. But I thought I would spend a little time here today to tell you what I'm really about. I'm gonna tell you what's in my toolbox, because I think that's what people should look at as voters. It's our responsibility to look at all 6 candidates that are running for this position and see what they bring to the table and see what they can contribute to the residents of Lincoln County. My family's been here for over 2 generations. My grandfather moved here in the late 60s, early 70s. He had a home in Fort Worth, and my family's owned a home here in Lincoln County since 2004. I'm a lifelong registered Democrat, and I voted for Claire every chance I got. I worked my way through college, doing restaurants, hotels, night auditing, and I worked at a doctor's office as a computer operator. Excuse me. I also worked for the state of Kansas as an HIV/AIDS and intravenous drug user prevention and education specialist, certified by the Red Cross. I have 40 years of management overall, 20 years as a training manager, and 5 years of teaching laboratories at my university. I graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo with a Bachelor of Science in Food Science. And for those of you who don't know about that school, for the last 33 years in a row, the U.S. News and World Report has ranked it as the #1 public university in the Western United States. I also stayed there and got my master's in food science and nutrition, which is where I started my environmental research. I use ozone as a replacement for chlorine in vegetable processing. It removes the carcinogen from the food supply. It makes the food healthier. And by using ozone, you get to use the water over and over again, save millions of gallons of water per year. I went on to Kansas State University, where I got my PhD in cereal chemistry. And for those of you who don't know about Kansas State, it was the original land-grant university in the United States, brought in by Abraham Lincoln in 1863 to bring Kansas in as a free state instead of a slave state. The Grain Science and Industry Department has been the #1 department in the entire world since its inception in 1910. I had the #1 polymer chemist in the entire world as my major professor while I was there. I graduated with honors. I'm in the National Honor Society for Certified Chemists. And because I wanted to dispel some of these rumors that I'm just a casino employee. I use ozone as a replacement for chlorine in cake flour processing, which removes the carcinogen from the food supply. It makes the food safer, and it also shortens the time that it has to sit before it can be sold. While I was getting my PhD, I also worked for the state of Kansas. I was an HIV/AIDS and intravenous drug user education and prevention specialist. I was responsible for 6 counties. I would go to homeless shelters, high schools, churches in Kansas State to give presentations in education and prevention. I give demonstrations on bleach kits, on how to use them. I distributed bleach kits and I distributed prophylactics to people who need them, along with information on where to get tested and prevention. I also did client services. I would take clients to the doctor's appointments, get their pharmacy meds, take them to the grocery store, whatever they needed. You also have to listen to these people. I would hold their hands while they were crying because their family would reject them because of who they are. And when they got too sick, I hooked them up with social programs that help them pay their rent and make their life better. And that's what I want to do for the residents of Lincoln County. I've never been elected to anything. And if you had told me I was going to try this 2 years ago, I said you were crazy. I worked on grant writing for the private sector for funding for my master's research at the state level for the HIV and AIDS and intravenous drug use and women's program, and at the federal level for funding for continuing research on my PhD stuff. My first job out of college was as a laboratory manager. There was 3 labs in there. There was a feed lab, a microbiology lab, and a wastewater lab. And from there, I went on to become certified in wastewater and potable water by the state of Washington. And after
I'm going to ask you to move toward the conclusion of your 3-minute.
Okay. What we need to do is compare each person's individual toolbox. And I think if you look at all the qualifications that are there, mine's the best toolbox to pick for position 1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for being here. I'm Cheri Brubaker. Some of you may know me as a journalist. You saw my byline in the News Times, the News Guard, and the Hot's News. Or maybe you heard my daily news broadcast on the radio. Some of you here, including our illustrious state representative David Gomberg and our city councilor Cynthia Jacoby, were guests on my radio show Hotline. And some of you know me as Congresswoman Val Hoyle's field representative. I grew up in Vita. We lived across the road from Vernon and Irene. Bert and Irene were different from my parents, different generations, likely different politics, but we were neighbors first, always neighbors. We show up, we listen, and we work together across our differences. That's the Oregon way. In politics, the beach bill beautifully illustrates the Oregon way. Republican Governor Tom Call working with the Democratic legislature to keep all of Oregon's beaches. I'm running for Lincoln County Commissioner because I believe in the Oregon way. We need to start with what we have in common. We all live here. This is our home. Lincoln County is divided right now by conflict on the board, by a loss of trust in county government. But the people that I talk to share the same concerns: housing, health care, whether their kids can afford to stay here, and whether their parents can get the care they need. Those aren't democratic problems. Those are not Republican problems. They're our problems. With federal funding under threat, a $4 million budget deficit, and a housing crisis, people need to know their county government is steady, functional, and working for them. I've been in this community asking the right questions, listening, building relationships, and working to solve problems here in Lincoln County for 13 years. That is exactly what this board needs right now. My reporting on an illegal encampment on Sayusla National Forest at 5 Rivers led to a collective cleanup and Lincoln County's $500,000 abandoned RV abatement program. I helped our Congresswoman Val Hoyle bring $5 million in federal funds to Lincoln County. I was boots on the ground. I was sitting across the table from our city managers, our mayors, our fire chiefs, water districts, and community leaders. To conclude, I want to be straightforward with you about how I'm running my campaign. I've taken unpaid leave from my job to do this. I put in $5,000 of my own money. The rest has come from longtime friends who believe in what I'm doing and from neighbors right here in Lincoln County. No special interest PAC money, just real people who believe this county deserves better. A lot of people in this county are under the impression that the Democratic Party has endorsed the candidate for position 1. And there has not been an endorsement in position 1 in this race. What I bring to this race is 13 years of living in this county, working to bring people together, sharing information, and solving problems. I know the issues, and I have the relationships and understanding to get things done. I'm not coming to the board to learn on the job. I'm coming ready, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for those opening remarks. I understand that Commissioner Chuck is on his way here. He's been delayed, but he'll be here in a few minutes. You know, folks, I started out tonight saying this is an important election. Yeah, I just want to tell you very quickly why it's so important to me. The first thing is I want a county commission we can be proud of. I want a functional county commission that can work to the benefit of the people of Lincoln County. And finally, I want a group that I can partner with in the work that we do in Salem, so that I've got people that I can bring to the meetings, bring to the conversation, bring to the negotiations, so that they are there and we are working together on your behalf. That's why I think that this race is so very, very important. So we have some additional questions, and I understand that these were submitted in advance and they were pulled from several different questions and some of them were merged together. Excuse me. So I'm going to start with the one question, and Cathie, I'll begin with you. Each time I'm going to rotate down the table here. What differentiates you from your opponents?
That's a really great question. There are two things I would say. The first obvious one is that I am a Latina. So I have a different perspective. I view the world necessarily from a different lens. I'm bilingual, so I speak two languages. So that would be the first thing because I engage in the world with that perspective, with that lens. I can speak loudly if that's okay. Can I do that? Okay. So that would be the first thing. No? Can I speak loudly enough that you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'd rather do that. So I engage with the world in that way because I am a Latina. And I use my skills always to help the Latino community stay informed and stay connected in every environment. I've been doing that as a child since I am the daughter of immigrants who had struggles with the language, with engaging with the rest of the world. Secondly, I would say that I think I bring municipal government experience from all the other candidates running for this position. So I have real practical experience in marrying policy and programs together, and then also looking for funding to make those programs work. So I've worked in government doing exactly those things. I also have a wealth of financial background experience when I worked in the private sector. So I have that added to the work that I've done in public service. And so I believe those things distinguish me from the rest of the folks trying to get this position.
Thank you. What distinguishes me from the people running? I only work in the private sector. And watching the videos of the Board of Commissioners meetings recently, it's pretty unbelievable. If people had acted like that in the private sector, they would be gone. And one of the reasons I chose to run is because when they decided to do the recall Claire, I was like, wait a minute, this is somebody who I voted for. She's worked for us. She's done a good job. And all of a sudden they want to recall her. So I never even thought of Board of Commissioners before that, to be honest with you. And it made me angry. And it's like, this can't be allowed to happen. People can't be treated that way. And we need people in there who are going to work for the residents of Lincoln County. I bring 40 years of experience, 20 of management, 20 years of training manager, 5 years of teaching. I have an excellent educational background, and I can work with the people on the board. We can get things done for the residents of Lincoln County. I'm not bashing these ladies. I like them. They're very nice. We do have different backgrounds and different qualifications, and that's what I'm asking you to do. Look at everybody's qualifications and pick the one that best fits for the position of Board of Commissioners position 1. Thank you.
I'm not coming into the board to run a job. I know the issues, I know how to bring people together, and I know how to get things done. As a journalist, I covered Lincoln County government, asking the hard questions and telling the truth about what I found. As a field representative for Congresswoman Hoyle, I helped constituents navigate issues with federal agencies. I sat in the governor's regional solutions meetings. I worked with our cities, our water districts, our ports, our fire departments. I was on the cooperator calls when ICE was in Newport. Threatening Newport, if you could hear, sorry. I bring a journalist's instinct for accountability. I held local government accountable from the outside for years. Now I want to bring that same standard of fairness, honesty, and transparency to our county government. We have a budget shortfall, a housing crisis, federal funding under threat, an administrator position vacant for over a year, and infrastructure that can't wait. The county needs someone to hit the ground running. That's me.
Right, so I'm running position 2. So what sets me apart is 1, I mentioned I worked for 18 years at the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and during that time, I led a statewide complex government program. So I have experience being a program administrator, managing complex government budgets, navigating and working within large bureaucracies. So as county commissioner, you don't do that, but I can empathize with the department heads and the people who run our offices, like the sheriff's office, the DA's office, et cetera. So I can bring that perspective and have some empathy about how decisions that the Board of Commissioners is making affects departments and how they are going to be administrating their departments. But I think the biggest thing that I do is I bring more than 20 years of experience building public processes, providing straightforward communications to the public, and bringing government to the people. I did that time and time again, whether I was working on a fisheries management issue, whether I was working on policy development for wave energy off the Oregon coast, or when I was leading the Marine Reserves and Protected Area program at the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. There are ways to build in transparency into decision-making processes. It's very, very important to provide clear communication and communication that reaches people where they're at. There's many ways to build trust. A lot of that is spending time, meeting face-to-face people, listening again and again and again. It's okay if people are venting at you. It's because they care. I know these tools, I bring them. And I think the other thing that sets me apart is I bring more than my 20 years of experience caring for natural resources and supporting our commercial fishing industry, which is very important to our economy and our sense of community and place in Lincoln County. So I think those are 3 things that set me apart.
Thank you all. Our next question, and Drew, we'll start with you, is how did you balance the needs for transparency and public input at the Board of Commissioner meetings?
Interesting you should say that. That's where I started looking was at these meetings that are important and how people are acting. We have to have good forum. We're all adults. We can voice our opinions without making people feel unsafe. If we have one person that's disruptive, they can be removed and the business can go on. But if you have multiple people, that's their objective, is to disrupt the business of the county. That's not acceptable. And if they're making people feel uncomfortable, nobody should have to work in a hostile work environment. There are other ways to get your point across. There's email, there's Zoom, there's all these things. People want their 3 minutes to be recorded, just mouth off. Fine. But if you're making people feel unsafe, that is unacceptable. We have to listen to what you have to say. And I may not agree with everything people have to say, because I want to represent everybody, not just the Democrats. I am a lifelong Democrat, but other people live in this county too. We all have to work together. But you're not allowed to be that disruptive to where you stop the county from working. And if they have that type of a hostile work environment, you're going to have to figure out something else for you in order to get your information. Thank you.
My career has been spent navigating conflict. As a journalist, I asked hard questions of people who didn't want to answer them. I covered contentious board meetings, investigated stories that didn't want to be told, and reported the truth even when it was uncomfortable. You learn quickly that conflict doesn't resolve itself. It just gets more expensive the longer it's ignored. As a field representative, I worked between frustrated constituents and federal agencies that weren't moving fast enough. I worked with people across the political spectrum, city councils, county officials, work districts, fire departments, water districts. The job was to find common ground, move things forward, and keep relationships intact, even when people were angry. What I learned, you stay in the room, you stay steady, you listen, really listen before responding. I don't take it personally. And I remember that anger directed at government is often grief about something lost, something feared, or something that didn't work that it should have. The board needs that right now. Not someone who will pour fuel on existing conflict, but someone who can hold steady, work across differences, and keep the focus on what Lincoln County actually needs. I've been doing this work here in this county, and I'm ready to bring it to the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners.
repeat the question.
How would you balance the needs for transparency and public input at commissioner meetings?
So to me, transparency means making decisions in an open public forum, right? Having the discussions between the decision makers in an open setting and then seeing how people then vote. And I think it would also be helpful to give commissioners an opportunity, if they would like to give an explanation of why they voted a certain way, they would have that option too. So that's, to me, what transparency and decision-making means. Public input is when people have a chance to weigh in, be heard, whether it's about a decision being made or just to express a concern or an issue that they have regarding government in general. So I do have ideas about how we can build a better formal public process, which is our board of commission meetings. Those would need to be worked on by the three commissioners. I think that's somewhere we could start with some agreement is if we're not agreeing with each other, can we at least agree on some rules on how we're going to improve the public process? So, to me, that means absolutely having public comment at every single meeting, an opportunity for general public comment, having it very clear what the ground rules are, making sure that the three commissioners agree to those ground rules and that we're fairly and consistently enforcing them, that time limits for public comment is consistently kept. Right, this creates a culture of stability, that people have a chance to be heard, et cetera. But that's the formal public process. I think we need to be doing a lot more for additional types of public opportunities for public input. I would love to be doing a series of listening and learning tours throughout the county with all three commissioners to hear from the public how we can do a better job of both the formal public process, but also just listening to people, taking their input, communicating how we are using their input to improve the county. These are very important. This is experience I have. I have lots of ideas, but it's going to take the commissioners working together to do that. So I'm not married to all my ideas. And I think it's also going to include working with county staff to make sure they feel safe, to make sure that they have the time. We're not making them work super crazy hours, right? There's a lot to do, but I'm eager to do this, and I look forward to doing it.
And if it's okay, can I just keep talking loudly? This microphone gives me hearing issues. This is things that I have done. So I've created boards, I've been on boards, I've managed boards for municipal government, and I have had to create the processes and explain out the rules of transparency. So what transparency means is an open communication, but it has to be within the bounds of the rules and regulations that govern what kind of communication that you're having. And so the issue that's happening now at the county level, I feel, is that the open communication sometimes is one-sided. We feel like when somebody takes up the air in the room, that leaves little to no space for anyone else to engage in the process. When we don't regulate the time that they're allowed to speak, we don't regulate the civil nature of which the speech needs to be, then that soaks up and deflates the opportunity for anyone else to meaningfully engage, right? And so our meetings have been usurped by folks who don't adhere to either civil engagement or abiding by the rules and regulations that govern the space that we happen to be in. So if we really want transparency, we have to start from a level playing ground, as Cristen mentioned. You have to know the rules, you have to explain the rules, you have to set the bounds of what those rules will be, and then those that attend are held to those rules. They must understand that in order for it to be equitable and everyone to have an opportunity to speak, you have to stick to the rules. Otherwise, no one is heard. Or as we're seeing right now, that communication is limited because of other issues that it creates when you violate policies, when you violate the safety of others, basically. So there are ways to be transparent. I've done this work. It's not a theory. I've also helped to facilitate making it more accessible to the community. As I mentioned, I'm bilingual, so it also means that I've made sure that transparency includes the whole community and not just the part of the community that happens to be in attendance. So that would be how I would deal with that balance.
Pass the microphone down to Cheri and go to the last of our preliminary questions, and then we'll move on to the dreaded question basket. Given the federal budget cuts, how would you prioritize the budget for Lane County? What programs or projects would you prioritize?
The cuts at the federal level are going to hurt. We have to be honest about that. And the county commissioner can't replace federal dollars, but there are things that we can do. We always have to have a project ready to go. Lincoln County should be submitting a community project funding request and a community initiated project. Those are the Senate and the congressional, they used to call them earmarks, now they're called congressional funding. We should have one ready to go every year for each office. I know this process from the inside, and I will make sure that we always have a viable project in the queue. We have to protect prevention, mental health services, school-based health centers, addiction counseling, harm reduction. Prevention is so much less expensive than crisis response. Every dollar cut from prevention costs us more on the other end. The Lincoln County Community Health Center sees 25,000 patient visits a year across 8 sites. Care for anyone, regardless of their ability to pay, that's not a line item, it's a lifeline. My life is saved by medical intervention. Who doesn't deserve to have medical care? Insurance costs have skyrocketed. I know people who you would not expect to not be able to afford health insurance because the marketplace shifted so drastically. Our Lincoln County Health Center is always there. If you have a sick child, if you're sick, if someone you love is sick, they should be able to see a doctor, and I will protect that.
Budgeting is always difficult. I've done it in the private sector. But when it comes to government, in my opinion, healthcare, education, your essential services, sheriff, those types of things are the untouchable programs. You can always look for other funding and other resources somewhere else, but you have to have your essential services in order to maintain your city government, your county government. That's my answer to that. Thank you.
Budgets are a difficult thing. The nice thing about county government is that you have an accountant on staff, right? You have a finance department that does that work of making sure that the numbers balance in the end. So what does a county commissioner do is we make sure that the budget aligns with the priorities that were set earlier that year. And so you have to make sure that you're funding the things that you issued as priorities. So you can't touch some legal aspects. You can't touch some procedural, state mandated, those kinds of projects. So you have to look at every department, every line item, but you have to keep in place your priorities that you've either set by your county commissioner priorities, your state priorities that have mandated services that you have to complete, your emergency services must be taken care of, and then you have your public safety. So those issues have to be taken care of. You don't get a choice in those things. But then everything after that should be looked under a lens, and every department is responsible or should be responsible for submitting a budget that aligns with the priorities that you've set and with what the finance department has indicated is the necessary cuts. Now, I've also worked for a city, many cities that now have had this happen. This is actually a typical thing. We're in extreme circumstances right now in this administration where the cuts are coming rapidly and erratically and sometimes without warning. And that is the environment that I work in every day. So every day I'm having to see where the federal government is cut, where they're trying to grab funding back that's already been awarded. And that requires strategy. So you have to strategize for the things that you don't know. You take care of the things that you do know and that are prioritized, and then you have to strategize for the long term. This is something that cities do often and that county governments are accustomed to doing. So our department heads are the experts. They know their budgets. They should be able to make adjustments and keep those priorities front of mind. And they're the ones that advise the commission. Now, can the commissioners come in and say, we might have to freeze funding, we might have to freeze COLA, as I have come from an environment where they froze COLA. There's all kinds of strategies that you can take when things are tight, and sometimes you can undo them over time as the situation reverses itself. But there are different options that you can take. I would always keep in mind that people are the priority, that essential services are priority. We take care of those that are most needy in the community. And we also have to keep in mind that this will not be forever. There will be another budget year that we can make adjustments if things didn't work out. We listen to the subject matter experts that know best how to manage those funds.
Better or worse. As a program administrator, I dealt with this at a program level. So, you know, out of the 6 biennia that I operated the Marine Reserves program budget at the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, only 1 biennia did I actually have a full budget and full staff. Every other biennia I was dealing with a furlough, a hiring freeze, or a significant cut to my budget. So I can again empathize with department heads and our finance department. But I agree, county commissioners are not and should not be in the weeds. Our department heads and our elected officers running their departments are the experts, giving them some autonomy and flexibility to make adjustments as needed. But with that said, to me, it's, you know, what services are the county mandated to carry out? Definitely a top priority. We have to make sure that those are well funded and still running. Those programs and services that have high community support, if it's not mandated. What programs or services, maybe we could find other additional funding. Maybe we're not gonna be able to use general fund. Is there a likely place we could think we have a good high likelihood that we could get funding from somewhere else? Always looking for efficiencies, or where we might be able to do contracts outside external forces, or combining within a region to share services, stretch our county dollars and services further. So what I would be bringing is, again, leaving it to the experts, but I am more than happy to be a creative problem solver, to help seek outside funding, to advocate to this guy that we need some money from Lincoln County for this particular program or service. Those are the skills I bring. I'm a partnership builder. I know how to advocate for programs and services, and I know how to read and support department heads. I think that's very important that they again feel they have autonomy and that I'm on their team.
Cristen, I think we'll be starting with you as we move into the dreaded question marks. What is your position on maintaining STR restrictions?
So the short-term rental STR, the STR that the program that the county has is for unincorporated communities in the counties, right? So we do want to be clear that cities have their own short-term rental rules and regulations and programs. I live in an unincorporated community neighborhood in the county, so this policy does affect me. I have notes because this question comes up a lot. So in general, I do support the short-term rental program that we have. I think it strikes a reasonable balance. It's trying to help protect our stock of long-term housing rentals. It's trying to address neighborhood concerns like noise or parking or septic capacity. But it's still supporting our tourism industry by allowing some short-term rentals It attracts people to come, stay the night here, spend their money in Lincoln County. We receive funding from the transient lodging taxes to the county. That's a benefit. We receive funding from the fees for the permits that people, when they have a short-term rental. So in general, I support I think it's doing a nice job of balancing. I think the program should be evaluated occasionally. I do not think this is a priority, but policy evaluation is important to make sure, are we still meeting the needs? Is it bringing in revenue that we want? Anyway, so there's not a ton of priority. In general, I support the STR program.
So STR restrictions, I answered this question when I applied the first time, and I said then, I think there was a couple of available areas that still had openings, but no one had applied. I said then, I think that we should maintain where we are now, and there isn't really a need. So short-term rentals were created for two reasons. Right, one, we needed some flexibility for the traveling folks who wanted to come to a community who had families, perhaps like mine with 6 children. You can't really stay in a hotel room comfortably. You want something bigger. And the other reason was to manage that, right? The burden on the communities. Somebody needed to be able to regulate what that impact was to the different communities where they existed. And so those reasons exist. I think Lincoln County has done a good balancing act of making sure that it is making some available for the community that needs that as their travel outlet. It's also a great opportunity for some folks to use a home they're no longer using or extra rooms to create some additional income for themselves. I've done that in the past myself, but I was an owner who stayed in the home. So there are different models of short-term rentals that I think work. So I can say with confidence, having done it myself, that there is a way to successfully run short-term businesses. Where we come up short at times is that the enforcement part of short-term rentals isn't happening, or that folks don't understand who's in charge of the short-term rental policy in their particular area. As Cristen mentioned, cities run their own short-term rental programs and policies. So you have to understand, if you're in the unincorporated area, those districts are managed by the county, but if you're in the city has their own policy. And so homeowners who want to engage in this are a little bit frustrated if they don't understand where to go. But we really don't have a good mechanism, whether you're in the city or the county, for compliance. So to make sure that residents who are experiencing the bad actors of short-term rentals, right? Those people that are loud, they come and throw a lot of trash in your neighborhood or rent a place simply to party in. We don't have a good way other than for complaints to make any significant change on who's allowed to have a short-term rental. So it is good that we have a policy that manages this. I would say to folks that are facing those challenges that they use that complaint mechanism until we have a better one for managing short-term rental adherence. But I agree that it needs to be reviewed periodically, I think 5 to 7 years, to make sure we're staying up to date with the way that people travel. Short-term rentals may not be the way people travel into the future. Many of us are seeing those camper vans in our neighborhoods, and that is likely the way in the future, right? The generations are now changing and people prefer to travel a different way. So as long as we're staying up on the ways that people travel and that we monitor compliance, I think we can have a system that works for everyone.
Maybe I had a different point on this, but I live in an unincorporated part of the county myself, and it does affect me personally, my neighbors. They have restrictions in place now, and I think they're fine. I don't want to see them expanded. I do have a problem with people owning 2 and 3 homes and leaving them empty, so that we have a shortage of housing already, and people can't live here who can go out shopping every day and we contribute to the income in Lincoln County. And the people who do own those homes usually don't live in Lincoln County, they live somewhere else, so that money gets pulled out. Yes, they pay the bed tax, okay, fine. But then you have to deal with the screaming people, the mess, and it's just not worth it. I don't want people, tourism is a big part of Lincoln County, I get it, but other people shouldn't come in and ruin the quality of our life so that somebody else can make a profit on it. To me, that's not fair. Thank you.
I'm pro neighborhood, but I also recognize the need for vacation rentals. I think that the county's done a really good job of trying to get this under control. I think there's also an inherent right to do what you want to within the law with your own property. So I would like to see some kind of incentive. I'm not sure how it could work, but there are so many people concerned about this. I'm quite sure that we could find a solution, find a way to incentivize property owners into renting their homes, their extra homes, their vacant homes to a long-term renter. So that would be, I think, a priority, because I think Lincoln City has a third of their houses are empty. They're not vacation rentals, they're second homes. And so, sure, we all have a right to own whatever kind of property we want. So I don't want to take property rights away from someone. I want to try to incentivize renting to the people who need it. And I've heard people say things like, well, nobody can afford to rent this big, beautiful beach house. We don't just only have a lack of affordable housing or workforce housing. We have a lack of housing at all levels. Our county administrator probably makes in the neighborhood of $200,000 a year, and it's been very difficult to attract someone here. And same with doctors. Dr. Leslie Hawkins had to try growing her own doctors from residents to stay here. Doctors can afford some of those homes. So I think, again, we have to think of incentives. As a key piece of the short-term rental issue is enforcement. So we have to have enforcement for the loud parties, for the parking, for the trash. Where I live, we don't have a whole lot of code enforcement, period, and I think we need that. We also don't have enough vacation rentals in Walport, and every time a house comes up on my cul-de-sac, I worry. My house that I bought was a vacation rental before we bought it. So it's very real. Those of us who work, who get up early in the morning and have to go to work, we don't want people partying late at night next door. So there's still work to do. I think that the voters spoke on what they wanted, and I think we're just fine tuning that process.
Cathie, what is being done to keep AI data centers out of Lincoln County?
Okay. Well, I can tell you what I've done in the past when I worked at Salt Lake City, which is a much larger city, and we were impacted by this. And I worked in economic development. We passed resolutions that didn't allow for certain water users to come into the community. So Salt Lake City was fortunate enough to not have to ever offer incentives to have a business come into its community. So it had the luxury of turning people away, and that's what it chose to do in order to make sure that only businesses that would allow our community to stay sustainable could come to Salt Lake City and do business. So what the county could do is work with our representatives to make sure that in an age, and especially in a location where climate sustainability is super important and where water usage is in jeopardy, that we pass resolutions and policies that make sure that we protect the water that we do have. And that if data centers are on the table by anyone, that they are required, and I don't hope we get them, but they should be required to take care of their own infrastructure. Because we don't have those things available to us, and we are not in a position to offer any kind of incentives to anyone. So data centers are known to not offer a lot of jobs, and they don't offer a lot of economic development to a community. So I would hope that Lincoln County would engage with its representatives to make sure that we could pass sensible bills that would help us protect the water that's out here, because they just absorb way too much, and they don't typically provide any benefit to the community that's above and beyond the cost to the community.
Let's see. Didn't know anyone wanted to read an AI data center. We are set up for tourism, and we don't have the resources for a data center. If I was on the board of commissioners, I would help write an ordinance that would block any data center from coming here. They take out huge amounts of resources, especially electricity. And unless they're gonna supply it themselves, we have a hard time supplying what we have now. I'm not in favor of it. I wouldn't want it. I'm in favor of limited economic growth within Lincoln County, where it's structured, where it doesn't have an impact on our residents, and it brings value to our lives and makes our lives better. Thank you.
We don't have a whole lot of available land, so maybe that will discourage a data center from coming. But what we do have is regular drought. We're seeing dams in Oregon, or plans for dams in Oregon to be taken down. We get a lot of our electricity. Our electricity is affordable because of the dams that we have. We weren't really excited about wind energy. There was a lot of resistance to that. So we have to think, where are we going to continue to get our power? We don't have enough to spare for a data center. So I hope that was a theoretical question, that nobody's really trying to do that. I think it's unlikely. We have a hard time finding places to build houses. So I'm not too worried about it. I'm also really confident in our state representatives to help us navigate that.
Sure. Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I haven't really thought about it in context of maybe one coming to Lincoln County. I have been keeping an eye on what's been happening elsewhere, such as like in the Dalles. But I do think our planning and zoning is probably one of our best. And then just what other people mentioned, that our limited natural resources such as water, and potentially electricity. So don't have too much to add.
Well, and your state representative will commit right here and now to keeping our air moist and salty. That's an interesting question. Here's another one. What are your thoughts on expanding the county commission from 3 to 5 members, electing them from designated regions, paying them less, and relying more on a county administrator?
That is an interesting proposal. Because at the moment, we can't even have a meeting. So I don't know if adding more people would be better or not. It's something that should be looked at, and if it actually meets the needs of the county residents better, then it's not a bad idea. But at the moment, we need to get the one we have working for now. And we can worry about expanding later. I'm not opposed to the idea of different regions and smaller pay. That's all great. But we can't get 3 people to agree now. How are we going to get 5? So that's kind of my thought.
I've had several people ask me that. 3 of the people who endorsed me in that conversation, it was brought up. So this is being talked about. I would support that. It would have to be a voter-driven initiative. It's not going to be a decision made by the board of commissioners, but I would support it. I think that being limited to how you can engage with each other is limiting. Having 5 would allow us to communicate more freely. Having geographic representation, I think, is very important. People are excited to hear I'm from Alport. It's a reality. Alport isn't generally represented on the Board of Commissioners. So I think it would give people more buy-in. I think they feel a little bit more represented. I think it's what people want. It's what we should do.
I'm certainly happy to have the discussion and facilitate this discussion of 3 versus 5. I'm not opposed to it, but I don't feel I have enough information. And again, as it's been mentioned, it would have to, I believe, go to the voters. The issue of the quorum, it would certainly help with that. There are other counties in Oregon that have 5. I do understand and like the idea of zoning and geographic representation. I've heard from constituents a lot of places that that's frustrating. And then the issue of pay, I would caution that when you have only volunteers or very little pay, you actually reduce even more so the number of people who are qualified might actually run for those jobs. Not everyone has the luxury of being able to do a full-time volunteer job. That's a privilege. So I just want to bring up the equity issue there. That's actually an issue I have with our state legislature. Not paid very much. So not that I'm glad we have someone who's willing to take very little pay to do that job and work very, very hard, but that is a full-time job. So not opposed. Interested in the discussion. I don't know if anyone's ever done a hybrid. I know some of the 3 seats where they have the judge and 2 commissioners, there's 1 paid position and 2 unpaid. I don't know for a 5-person commission, if you could have several paid and several unpaid, anyway, worth exploring, looking at, talking to some people who are experts in governance.
I've actually come from a community that has representation based on a regional area. So it's not necessarily one particular city, but a region, so that the demographics are evenly split among that representation. I think that system has worked well because I think it keeps you accountable to a specific group. And so if a particular region feels like they're not being represented, it's an easy vote, supposedly, right? So I agree with that system. I don't have a preference on the number. I think that's up to the voters, and I'm happy to have that entertained. But as a woman of color, I do see an equity issue with this, as Cristen mentioned. I also see that this is a position, I'm the workforce, and I rely on my income to support my family. So if we're talking about reducing the amount of pay for this position, then I would not be somebody that would be interested in this position. I'm a career public servant that pays little enough as it is, but to continue on in a position, knowing that your pay could be cut is a difficult choice when somebody relies on that income to support their family. The other thing I would say about that is, I think it's relying more on the administrator. I think that we've seen balance in government. So the legislative and administrative sides of the government need to be balanced. And that has worked well when you have a council and an administrator and they have different jobs, but they need to coordinate to make that happen. And so I would have a fear that that might change the balance of that work happening. I've given the example to people about my thinking by saying, if you think about your fire department and you send 3 people to fight a fire, or you send 5 people to fight a fire, just because 3 people went to the fire doesn't mean you don't pay the other 2. And so when people are talking about reducing the pay if you get 5, I would like to ask you to think about that you actually are just adding more people that you have to pay. You're not reducing the pay because the work is still the same. Even if you have an administrator, which we have had, their role is different and it's been set up to be different. So a couple of things to think about, and you have to set the proper example for people. It's not a job divided among 5. When you think about a fire, we don't divide up our fires that way. We don't divide up our police work that way. We say that you need to bring a certain level of experience and work ethic and delivery of a service, and that's what we pay you for, not how many people show up to do that exact same job. Think of our doctors and nurses, same scenario. So that would be my thinking on that subject.
Well, interesting conversation, and listening to you, the light just came on for me that commissioners get paid 2 to 3 times more than the legislator, which is why so many people are running for the president and nobody's ready for the legislature. I have another question here. And I noticed that Commissioner Chuck has joined us, and maybe we'll get him some time up here in a few minutes, but this question is, I can.
Singing. Sorry, see.
A lot of animosity and a lot of animosity comes from people who don't understand the county commission position. What would you do to educate the public about how meetings work?
Present, talk to people. That's what I've been doing since I started running for this job. People want stability, and maybe they don't understand exactly what a commissioner does because there's been so much conflict, and there's things going on behind the scenes that we all aren't. There are, you can Google, you can see there are lawsuits, there are ethics charges being thrown out. There's a little bit of mystery in who's doing what. So I think the job for the Board of Commissioners is to define things that are in question, to let people know who is doing what. And even the job of commissioner has been a little bit different because the number has been reduced because we haven't had the county administrator. So the commissioners have been doing things that might be outside the scope of what they're supposed to do. The commissioners set policy. They don't manage personnel directly. So in absence of the county administrator, it needs to be very clear, in my opinion, who is doing what. And so I think that just comes back to communication and being present. When people have questions, they should feel like they can find the answer. My phone number is on my website. It's on, I give it out, it's there, and you call me, and I pick up the phone, and that's not going to change when I'm elected. I think that's the job, is to be responsive, to let people know what's going on, and answer their questions, just as much as it is to ask the questions and find the answers. We have to answer them too.
Wait a minute. We can just go after.
Education is key. When you have a board of commissioners, they have a definitive job. As far as I know, we only have one county administrator. So what happened before that? Wasn't it the board of commissioners that enforce things? So we need to find out if it's even necessary to have a county administrator. But if people don't understand what the job of the commissioner is, we need to educate them, either through emails, putting it on the website, having flyers at the meetings, to show them what we do. Once they understand what the job of the commissioner is, most people animosity will go away. And then you can engage with them and find out what their needs are for the residents of the county. Thank you.
So animosity in someone's brain comes from the reaction to fear, right? So when we are triggered by fear, we have this fight or flight that happens in our brain. So when people are constantly fighting about something, it's a good bet that there's some level of fear that's been induced in them. We do have some bad actors that just want to engage in this as sport. And we've seen that in this administration, that that there's an increased prevalence of that. So people who want to engage just to engage. When you set clear rules and policies, you can generally weed those folks out, right? You're not allowed to curse. You're not allowed to call people names. If you act uncivilly, you'll be asked to leave. So when you set clear rules and expectations, you do two things. You calm the brain, right? Because the rules are known, the expectations are known. And two, you have a way to remove the people who just want to be contrary to be contrary. But you have to work as a county commissioner to reduce the fear. So what does that? Setting those policies and procedures that make people understand. Clear, direct communication that provides an example of exactly what you're talking about. So if you say, I can't engage in this communication, give people the why so they don't think that you just made it up. And then being consistent over time. I'm a mother of 6. Nothing would make the day go worse if my kids didn't know what to expect, if they didn't have a routine. You've heard that if you have a routine, your children function better. It's because you've reduced the fear in their brains of the unexpected. I think we don't give up that need as we become adults. So my preference would be to set clear expectations and goals. You have rules of engagement for civility, and you just talk to people about what you're intending to do and what you're currently engaged in doing.
I've heard some good ideas up here. The second most frequent question I've been getting from people is, what does a commissioner do? The first one is, are you crazy? And I do think there is a lack of understanding on what commissioners do, right? There is the board of commissioners, right? You're a part of a decision-making team, and that's what you see in the formal board of commission meetings. But there's a lot more than that. That's just really a fraction of what commissioners do, right? You are a liaison between the community and the county, being out and about in the county. You're an advocate and representing the county interests elsewhere in Salem with our U.S. Congress people, with across in regional issues, and then you're a convener, right, around topics that our community cares about or that may affect our community. So those are things I think people don't see or understand. So I agree with a lot of things of like ways we can bring more stability to the board of commission meetings, with clear rules. I do like the idea of whoever is commissioner needs to be doing a better job of explaining when you're having a one-on-one conversation, helping educate the public. You can just work it into the conversation. Maybe we have a little civics 101 workshop around the time. So there are ways to address this. I think that it needs to be addressed, and commissioners play an important role in educating and bringing the public along with that.
We have a few minutes left, and one more question. Walter, I was going to invite you to come up and participate in this last question. And actually, if I can ask you the previous 6, so you can just kind of... Final question that I have is, what is your number one focus if you were elected? We'll start this end of the table.
Not being here, it's all the back opportunities. Number one priority right now is county budget, actually. We are looking at 3 different budgets. We're looking at the county's money, we're looking at state money, and we're looking at federal money. Unfortunately, we have to approve our budget on this in June. The state is on biennium. We're in the last biennium. And the federal government is still on a continuing resolution, and they don't do their budget until October. So we will not know the status of these state funds and some of these federal funds until next year. We can depend on our general fund, which is about $55 million, and the rest of that money, I think we haven't got our beginning balance, but it's going to be between $180 million. Last year was 205. So we need to make sure that we account for your money, try and budget for the money that is going to come in, And then we also need to do our job as advocates for the county by talking with Representative Gomberg, Oil, and our federal representatives to make sure we get kind of an idea when that money is coming in. I was on a call earlier this week and found out one of the other things with HR1 is asylees and refugees are going to be taken off the Affordable Care Act. So they're going to be going on our health care system. This is a need that we're going to have to look at. The county provides health services. So we need to make sure that we have our budget in hand and we are able to budget for money that is hopefully coming in and may not come in, and do that as responsibly as possible. So that is going to be my number one focus. Thank you.
I agree with Walter, especially with regards to the budget. It's gonna be a serious issue. And I am very concerned, especially with our Health and Human Services Department. But I think I'm gonna take a different tack. I'm gonna say bringing stability back to our county government. It's the foundation that everything else is built on, and it's gonna help us get through hard times. So, yeah, ways we can build back public trust, ways we can build back trust with our county staff and make sure they feel supported and ensure that our essential county services run reliably. I've got lots of ideas on how to do that. That's going to take a team, and it's going to take the entire county. It's all of us. So look forward to working with you on that to bring stability, services, stewardship to Lincoln County government.
Fun fact about me, every job I've ever taken, private or public sector, I've been asked to join an organization in the middle of chaos. So I don't know what it was about me that said to people, you can fix things, but I do like organization and order. And so when I've joined something, that's been part of my methodology when I come into a place is organization and order. So when I think about this question, what's the focus? I'm thinking about the time frame when I would possibly join the board, and that would be next year. So the budget question will have been settled this year already. Hopefully they're in the process of hiring an administrator. So the administrator issue will be settled, and my role would be to help support that individual in that seat. And so my focus would then turn to understanding and knowing county government and the services it provides. I believe in being organized. So you start at the top by listening to learn. I would need to meet with my department heads. I've started that process now so that I can better understand the issues. I'm meeting with them one-on-one to hear what their challenges are. But as a new commissioner, I would want to hear what the challenges are, how they address the budget, if they have some strategy going forward for filling in those gaps for the missing parts of their budget, and what their long-term planning is. And if they don't have one for their department, I would want to engage the county in our long-term planning. What's our 5-year plan? What's our 10-year plan? And how are we helping our departments where there is missing gaps? So are we reaching out to our representatives? What's that schedule like? Because it should be on a schedule. Who are we reaching out to? Is everyone covered when we need to ask for that help? And so I believe in being very strategic, which is what my role has always been when I've joined someone in a position, because in order to get out of chaos, you have to start by listening to understand and then formulating a plan so that you can be systematic. I love a good checklist. I want to check off the boxes so I make sure and not leave something off of the to-do list. And I want to be sure that the county is doing the same.
If I'm elected to the Board of Commissioners, my number one priority would be infrastructure. Healthcare, mental health, education, fire, sheriff. It's a multi-pronged approach. You have to provide those types of services. We're in chaos right now within the county. We can't get a meeting going. We're going to get people elected, hopefully it'll settle down, and then we have to get to work to make the county work for the residents. And right now, that's not happening for you. And I know I'm the outsider, I've never done politics before. I do have a lot of experience. My experience will transition over easily. But we have to have a priority straight. We have to get a functioning county government first. And we have to have, like We need to replace the earthen dam up there. You need a wastewater treatment. You need the roads fixed. I almost have to have my car repaired coming in from the city. It's getting really bad. And those people who drive that know what I'm talking about. But it's infrastructure, and that's a big word, and it covers a lot of things. But that's what's important. And if you can multitask and tackle these types of issues and work with your representatives, work with the board, work with the people within the county, you can get a lot accomplished if you work together. Thank you.
I think the biggest problem that we're facing right now is the lack of public trust and the disengagement. People are disengaged, they're mad. And we need to bring everybody back. We need to rebuild the lost trust. We need to gain confidence again. And I mean, we all read the news. It's embarrassing, you know, it's on News in the Valley, it's bad. And so that perception harms so much. We need to build not just relationships back with our constituents, our residents, people who live here, but staff, people that the county works with, the cities, the city governments, the federal government, the agencies that we depend on to get projects through, to support programs in our county. So we've got a lot of work to do, and we need to have orderly meetings. We need to restore not just trust, but some of our institutional norms. 2 years ago, you would not have seen the kind of behavior that we're seeing now, and people are angry. I was at a city council meeting where folk in my town, in Waldorf, where folks were so angry that it almost felt like they were moving in on the council. And there was reason for people to be mad. I'm not saying they should have been mad. I'm saying that they should have respected that space. They should have used some decorum, some basic respect to express themselves. And I think we've lost that. And I think all of us have touched on how we need to explain how things are done. We need to reiterate the rules, but we all have to come together and respect our institutions. I was at a town hall with Congresswoman Hoyle, and at the end of the town hall, the crowd rushed and took over the microphone. I mean, it's just kind of appalling that we just lost that basic decency and respect. And so we all have to work together to build that back up. And as commissioner, I would make sure to engage, to be available, to work with any partner who will work with me. We need to work across our differences, and we need to rebuild what's lost.
Well, thank you, candidates. Walter, we began this part of the meeting this evening by inviting everybody to spend 2 to 4 minutes for the general introduction, and I want to give you the courtesy of that opportunity as we are winding down the time that we have available tonight.
Thank you, and I apologize once again. I'm just Walter Chuck, and your current county commissioner for position number 3. I have enjoyed serving you for 14 months. I look forward to doing it again for 4 more years. I've worked really hard and I've gotten some things done. I'm really proud of what I've done. If I've carried myself well, I've been an example of the behavior I want to have modeled. And I look forward to talking with you. And after this is over, if you want to come up and talk to me, please do. But thank you. Walter from LincolnCounty.com. Have a good evening.
I want to thank our candidates tonight. Public service is hard. Public service is hard. And this campaign is moving toward election day in a few weeks or a few days. But of course, many of these folks are going to need to continue in November. I would say if there's somebody that you feel very strongly about, any of the candidates, don't rest, don't sleep, don't tarry, spend your time out there advocating for the people that you want to support, you want to see representing you. It will make a huge difference. We celebrate our similarities, we respect our differences. Let's give a huge round of applause to everybody. Now you turn the microphone back over to Cheri Brubaker, who's got a little more business to wrap up before we conclude.
Great. Actually, I think we're pretty far along. Amy gave us an update on neighborhood leaders. If there are any other committee reports, Kelly?
Everybody who's in my area that's gonna be neighborhood leader, I have your packets here, so come see me at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
What else, Kelly? What's happening on Friday?
Oh, Friday, I'm having a postcard party, writing party from 1 to 3
At your place.
at my house, so you can contact me to get the directions. And then, we're having one at Diane Epstein's house. We're not having one at Diane Epstein's house. But we are having some.
Yeah, we're having 4 more,
You can tell about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mary. You have,
we're having 4 more postcard writing parties in Lincoln City. On three Lincoln City. 3 in Lincoln City and 1 in South Beach. I'm sorry, 3 in Lincoln City. And if you want to know where to go to find out about that, you can talk to me or Amy or Kelly or Joanne, and we'll get you that information. I have it. I have addresses. She has addresses. You guys know, but we do. It's fun to us. And if you want to write postcards, yeah, we've got plenty of postcards to write.
okay, Elliot.
Yeah, well, Landers and Millers have been really organized on getting letters to the editors to the students that probably on the read. And I would love to see at least like 1 letter probably going on supporting any of our any Democratic candidates. So can I get volunteers to commit to writing a letter this week, 24th, and getting it to the article? 1 volunteer. Anyone who will write a letter? No, thank you. Can I get a volunteer one for April 30th? April 30th. It doesn't take that much. You can just go on the website, on the websites and take some few points down and just get a vote letter based on what they've already written. Anyone? No? Yes. Okay, thanks.
Okay, if you decide later that you would like to write letters to the editor, you can contact us through our website at Lincoln County Democrats.Oregon.com. And we'll get for information to that. Sure. Okay, I think that's all we have. Again, support our candidates. They are great. They're working hard. They'll do a wonderful job for you. And thank you for being here. This meeting is adjourned.
Amen.